Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. The international break is upon us. It's a good opportunity to just rest up, chill out, take stock of what the season's looked like so far, try and map out what's coming in the not too distant future and try and understand what we need to achieve in order to put ourselves in a really strong position going forward. But to go into the international break, top of the pile is nice. Okay, it's early, we're not getting carried away, we're not getting ahead of ourselves, but to have managed to turn the situation around the way that we have in the last few weeks where, if you rewind back to when Liverpool beat us at Anfield, it was the title race is over, Arsenal aren't good enough, Arsenal aren't brave enough, Liverpool are going to run away with it, etc., etc. But we've managed to put ourselves in a position where now we sit top of the pile, where now all the negative talk is around Liverpool rather than Arsenal. Now, there'll be swings and roundabouts, and it will swing back our way at some point. The minute we drop any points in any sort of game, regardless of the context, regardless of how it happened, there will be question marks asked of Arsenal, and there will be question marks asked again of Mikel Arteta. And I don't for a second think this is over. I know a lot of people have looked at Liverpool in the last few weeks and think they look fragile, not quite as good defensively. Some of their attacking signings, notably sort of Florian Wirtz, who they paid a lot of money for, haven't really shown what people expected in the early stages of their Liverpool careers. But Liverpool will come good. Manchester City will be there or thereabouts as well, particularly if Erling Haaland keeps up his unbelievable form. I mean, he could easily go down as the greatest goal scorer the Premier League has ever seen. And I use the term goal scorer, not greatest player. But there is a conversation to be had around goal scorer, no question about that. And if he continues in this vein of form for the next few years, I think it gets to a point probably where it's undisputable. So, yeah, look, it's kind of good the way we're kind of feeling moving into this international break. And I'm glad we've kind of dealt with all that kind of negativity that was sort of floating around over the course of the last few weeks. And listen, I was worried. I was concerned. I worried that we were going to need a bit too long to get ourselves sorted. I worried that Liverpool were going to continue relentlessly. And maybe that was the fan in me sort of starting to worry about some of the outside noise, because actually when you watched Liverpool in the first few weeks of the season, even when they were picking up results, it was clear that they weren't perfect. It was clear that they probably were going to drop points at some time, and that if they did not improve their form, it would catch up with them, and it has in the last couple of weeks. Back-to-back defeats in the Premier League against difficult opposition, of course. Crystal Palace and Chelsea, two places that we've got to go. I'm not taking those fixtures for granted at all, but they also lost to Galatasaray, sandwiched in between those two games, which I think, begged some questions of sort of some of Arne Slot's decisions and where they're at, etc., etc. But look, as I say, it's very, very early days. Don't get carried away. Enjoy it, because I think it's very, very important that you enjoy the ride. That's something I've come to realise over the last year or so, I would say. Not just in football, not just when you're following your team, but in life in general. You can get so bogged down in wanting to achieve a specific goal that you can have a hell of a lot of fun along the way and not really take it in and soak it up while you're going through that process, if you like. So, yeah, enjoy the ride is what I would say. Okay, we've got a couple of bits of news to discuss today, and I do want to have a little bit of a discussion around the Emirates Stadium atmosphere. I've seen that come up as quite a big talking point on social media over the course of the last couple of days, so I do want to put my 2 pence in on that. But we'll start with the fitness of Declan Rice. Now, Declan Rice had to go off against West Ham United with what looked like a back problem, and people were a little bit concerned, were a little bit worried. We'd lost Martin Odegaard earlier on in the game, and therefore there was a bit of panic. What I will say is that Declan Rice, I think initially, when he sort of stopped playing, he was asked by the referee, because this unfolded right in front of the press box where I was sat. He sort of indicated to the referee, I'm okay, like as in you don't need to call the medical staff on, I'm fine. And then a few seconds later, he sort of changed his mind, I think, as he went to move and as he tried to kind of get himself back into a kind of upright standing position. So look, it was obviously some sort of issue. It looked like a back problem. It looked like something was feeling a little bit sore. He kind of made a sign to the physio when he came on the pitch, which kind of suggested that maybe something was rubbing a little bit, bit of lower back pain, and perhaps it's something that Declan Rice has had to deal with before, and maybe this was a sort of warning sign that he'd maybe pushed himself a little bit too hard, and it was time to get him off and protect him. Now, the good news is, and it's good news in the sense of it means the injury is not severe, but it's not good news in the sense of Declan Rice now risks aggravating that, because he will be joining up with the England squad for this international break. Now, Declan Rice is not the type of guy, I don't think, that would look for any excuse to dodge and to avoid joining up with the national team, even when they haven't got the most glamorous of fixtures coming up. They play Wales and Latvia, I believe, in this international break. So, you know, the game against Wales has always got a little bit of a something to it because of the rivalry. Latvia, I mean, look, Declan Rice can probably get through these games, with all due respect to those two nations, at 65%. And so let's hope that Thomas Tuchel, who, according to Mikel Arteta, is very transparent with the Arsenal boss, has a really good relationship with the Arsenal boss, talks regularly with the Arsenal boss. Let's hope that they've had a conversation and that Thomas Tuchel and his staff are going to take care of Declan Rice. And this is always the tricky sort of situation you find yourself in as an international manager, I think, where, you know, you've got players that are not at 100%. Their clubs are desperate for them to be fine and to be protected and to be looked after. But you, as an international manager, you need to win games. You need to get results. And you're not going to pick your teams based on what club managers want. At the same time, though, you've got to manage those relationships, because you can find a situation where clubs will start digging their heels in and saying, nope, you know, this player's not fit enough to travel, etc., which puts you as an international coach in a really difficult spot. And it can damage relationships. It really, really can. So I think there's got to be that balance. Arteta has to understand that Thomas Tuchel has a job to do, but Thomas Tuchel also has to understand that Declan Rice is an Arsenal player. Arsenal pay his wages. You know, and I'm sorry, people say country before club. In modern football, it's absolutely not that. It is club before country. And the finances of football and the footballing landscape, the way it's turned out and the way it's evolved and developed over the years, has dictated that. Of course you want to play for your country. Of course you want to represent your country in the tournaments. There's no question about that. And I know you've got to qualify for the tournaments. But, you know, this is not Declan Rice going to play in a World Cup, where even if he wasn't at 100% as his club manager, you can understand it and kind of, you know, get where he's coming from. And as an ex-player, Mikel Arteta is, you know, he didn't play really for Spain. You know, he'll probably appreciate, you know, what that means, having not managed to do it himself more than most. So, yeah, let's hope that Declan's okay. Let's hope that he's managed well enough and safely, and we get him back unscathed, because with Odegaard out, we really can't afford to lose Declan Rice as well. But yeah, as I say, he's going on international duty. The fact that he's been allowed to go and he hasn't withdrawn from the squad says to me that this is something very, very minor. Moving on, though, to Martin Odegaard. Now, Arsenal confirmed yesterday that he has suffered a MCL injury, which is a medial collateral ligament injury. Now, Arsenal have been very, very vague on the length of absence that we can expect now from Martin Odegaard, although, to be fair to them, they probably don't know at this stage. You know, they probably need to do further tests. They probably need to consult others. They probably need to kind of investigate the injury a little bit more. But if you read some of the commentary on this on social media, and there are a lot of sort of physios and doctors who do chip in and provide a little bit more knowledge around these types of injuries, it's said that he could be out for about 5 weeks. But again, you know, those guys, yet they have medical knowledge. I'm not taking that away from them or disputing that. Far more medical knowledge than I'll ever have. But they don't know the full ins and outs, okay? They read MCL. They try and gauge, you know, the severity of the injury by essentially guessing what exactly the damage is and how it happened. Or what happened, I beg your pardon, based on how it happened. They'll watch the video and they'll see the kind of contact and the way that Martin Odegaard went down, etc. They'll combine that with what they know about MCL injuries, but again, they won't have the full picture. So take that as a guideline rather than a definitive, I would say. Watching that challenge back, I felt like Martin Odegaard got caught in two minds. I felt like he sort of went to make the challenge, then wasn't 100% sure, and that hesitation meant that he went into the challenge not really kind of set for it, And I think that's where the damage has been sustained and how that's come about. Look, you have to make these decisions as a footballer in a flash. And I'm not going to sit here and say, he bottled it or, he backed out or anything like that, because, you can get caught in two minds. And when you've only got a split second to make the decision, you can quite easily find yourself essentially doing neither at 100%. You have to go in all in and go from a kind of strong position and have a strong body stance. Or you kind of dangle the leg in there, because I feel like he felt he needed to make some form of challenge, even though he wasn't set. And you end up risking what's happened to him here. It's unlucky. I mean, I can't think of another player that's come off 3 times this early in the season in home games, consecutive home games, twice with a shoulder problem, and now with this knee issue. It's been a real rotten start to the season for Martin Odegaard from an injury perspective. Look, and the good thing, I suppose, is, yes, we have Eberechi Eze now at the football club who can play in that creative midfield role. We have Ethan Nwaneri. We have lots and lots of different options at Arsenal Football Club now. And we're saying that we're okay with this. Even, I say okay, we'd be better for having him, but we're obviously okay coping without him because of those 2 names I've mentioned. But we've also got Havertz to come back at some point. Madueke's out. Jesus is out. Nkapie's still not available. So, the squad is in a much better place to handle this type of thing. But that doesn't make it any less annoying when you watch your players suffer and sustain these injuries. And it does leave you kind of cursing our luck a little bit, doesn't it? Because, and I know injuries go on everywhere, and I know all clubs have them and all clubs have to deal with them, etc., etc. But you're always going to feel a little bit hard done by, aren't you, when it's your club? And it seems to be us over and over and over again. And the thing is with the Odegaard injuries is that in the past, when we talked about, how Havertz had that hamstring problem, when we talked about Gabriel's hamstring problem, Saka's hamstring problem, we could sort of trace it back to the fact that those guys had played way too much football, not just in that period of time, but going back over the last 2-3 seasons. And we all feel, I think, that the overload that they were having to deal with has ultimately contributed to the severity of those injuries. Rather than it being a pull, it ended up being a tear. And sort of having spoken to sort of sports physios and people who work at the Premier League level in terms of sort of doctors at big football clubs, there is a big concern within the kind of sports medical community that the demands that we're putting on players, the lack of recovery time, the lack of training that they're able to do in between games because of the lack of recovery time between each fixture, that is a huge contributing factor. And that is really led to an increase in severe injuries rather than just injuries. When I say severe, I don't mean a pull of the hamstring or a pull of the groin or a pull of the calf. We're talking tears, high grade issues. And this is the thing, right? It is a wider problem. There's no question about that. But for Arsenal, it's been really, really frustrating over the last couple of years. With the Odegaard injuries, the shoulder thing, it's an impact problem. With this, it's an injury that's clearly been sustained due to an impact. So not really sure that there's much as a football club we could have done to avoid these Martin Odegaard injuries. I think you can, as I keep saying it, I'm not going back and pointing the finger at people, and I certainly don't want to sound like I'm banging on and on and on about previous injuries. But if I look at some of those previous injuries, I can't definitively say why they happened, but I can say that I think we increased the likelihood of them happening because of some of the decisions that as a football club we took and made. Whereas Martin Odegaard falling on his shoulder, you can't really do anything about that. Him then having a recurrence of that same problem. Again, you can't really do much about that because you cannot preempt the contact. You cannot wrap him up in bubble wrap and send him out onto the pitch. So some things are out of your control. And I think the way that Odegaard suffered this injury is very, very unlucky. But we just got to take it on the chin and we got to deal with it. Right, I do want to talk before we sign out about the Emirates Stadium atmosphere. Now, I do think at times this season it's been a little bit flat. I do. And I do think at times last season it was a little bit flat in comparison to what it had been like in the 2 seasons prior. Now, let me say this, okay? I think there are a lot of things that as a football club we can do to try and improve the atmosphere. I think tickets need to be more affordable, but we know that the club are not going to cheap out on the ticket prices, because why would they do that? No other club's doing it, and obviously it's a business, and there's a huge demand, and the more demand there is, the higher you can push those prices, and nobody's going to really do too much about it. People keep saying, I won't go, I won't pay it, but you will, because we're all addicted. I'm the same, okay? I've got a season ticket that no matter what my situation is, come rain or shine, I'm going to renew it. And there have been, believe me, right, not so much recently, but there were times when I was younger, and I was working in a job where, I probably wasn't making as much money as I should have been making. And, I'd just taken on a mortgage, and I just started a family, and, I was struggling. I'll be honest, I hold my hands up. I'm not ashamed to say it. There were points where I was struggling in dealing with kind of being someone who has to take care of a home, of a family, being the only breadwinner at the time, etc., etc. But I always found a way to renew my season ticket, because I was addicted, and I still am addicted, and I'm desperate to be a part of the football club in that sense. So, you can say, oh, the prices are too high and people are being priced out and whatever. And for some people, they won't be able to make it work. And I've got huge sympathy for those people, because I've been there. I know what it's like. It's tough, okay? It really, really is. But at the same time, I think the problem that we have when we're talking about the atmosphere is that we start to get a lot of finger pointing, okay? So we get people that, and I'm not singling out any one group here. I'm just giving you examples of some of the different camps that I've kind of identified when having conversations with people about this. So you get those people that struggle to get a ticket, and when a ticket becomes available, they find the price to be really kind of off-putting or difficult for them to hit, which is fair enough. They complain that the tickets are too expensive and they don't become available enough. Then you've got the people that have the money and have no issues with that, but can't find ticket availability. And then they turn around and they say stuff like, I don't care if I've got to pay over the odds. I'm going to do it if the opportunity comes along. Like, I've had it said to me, I've had people that I know who, have not got an issue necessarily with affordability, who have come to me at times and said, who's using your ticket for X game? I'll give you 300 quid for it. Like at Cat A best, it's a £71 ticket, but they give you 300 quid for it. So those people will say that availability is the problem, affordability is not an issue for them. Then you've got people that are season ticket holders that moan about being season ticket holders, but will never give it up. Then you've got season ticket holders that have them and don't really value them, but have them because they don't ever want to lose them and think it's cool to say to people around them, I'm a season ticket holder. And so they throw a ton of money at it, but they're not really bothered about how it's utilized, how it's used. And they'll only pick and choose the bigger games and the more glamorous games to turn up to. Again, I'm not sitting here saying, right, that any one of those groups in isolation is a problem, or having a pop at any of those people. What I'm simply saying is that for different people, there are different issues. Okay, for some it's affordability, for some it's availability, for some it's about time, for some it's about convenience, travel, etc. Whatever way you try and look at this kind of ticket situation, you're always going to have people that have a different problem, have a different issue, and it's a very, very complex one to solve. The reason I'm talking about tickets, availability, affordability, etc., is because over the course of the last few days, I've seen lots of people on social media blaming what they call tourist fans. What is a tourist fan, I ask you? Because there are people that live all over the world that are just as in love with, just as dedicated, and just as adoring of this football club as someone who lives in Finsbury Park. Okay? And though there will be people that argue, no, I'm London born and bred, etc. I'm London born and bred. Okay? I am. I've been going to Arsenal since I was a little kid. But I also know, for example, some American people who grew up on the complete other side of the world, but who are just as passionate and just as in love and adoring of our football club as I am. And doing this job, like working in football, podcasting, etc., constantly speaking to people from all over the world about our beloved club, that's become even more apparent to me. I don't like this idea of labelling them as tourist fans. They're not. There's no such thing as a tourist fan. There is such thing as a tourist, though. And when I say tourist, I mean someone that's come to London for the weekend, has no affiliation to Arsenal, has no relationship with Arsenal Football Club, but who says, I fancy going to a Premier League game, and then pays over the odds to come and doesn't sing, doesn't really get involved because they don't really have that passion for it because, as I say, there's no affiliation. That is a tourist. There's no such thing as tourist fans. You're either a fan or you're not. And if you're a fan, it doesn't matter where you come from, where you live. And there'll be people out there that go, yeah, but I go to 20 away games a season. Great. Amazing. I tip my hat to you in terms of your dedication and in terms of the amount of money that you pump in to make sure that you can do that. Some of my best friends fall into that category. And I've got huge admiration for the commitment that they show. But don't be fooled into thinking there aren't thousands of people all over the world, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people all over the world that if they could be in your situation, they absolutely would. Okay, so they're not tourists because they can't do it. They're not tourist fans because they can't do what you do. They don't have the access that you do. They don't have that locality to be able to do it like you do. They're not tourist, like this idea of tourist fans, it annoys me. Because let me tell you this, okay? And I've been a season ticket holder at Arsenal for a long, long time. Some of the people, in fact, probably most of the people that turn up 1 minute before kickoff or 5 minutes into the game, the people that disappear for a beer 10 minutes before half time and don't come back until 10 minutes into the second half, and who leave on 85 minutes because they want to get the train before it gets too packed. The vast majority of those people, I can tell you, are not the tourist fans that get to go once in a while, who want to take in the full experience, who want to lap it up. It's the people who do go to most games and who take it for granted. Now, there are some cases and there are some instances where that can't be avoided. You might live miles and miles and miles away, and the last train means, the time of the last train, I beg your pardon, means that you've got to leave a little bit earlier because it's an 8 p.m. kickoff midweek. Let's say you got a train out of Euston at 10:40, 10:30. You got to get to Euston. That's fine. I get that. There are people who, have to kind of fight those battles on a weekly basis to be able to attend and to be able to do their thing. Everybody's got their own story. Everybody's got their own thing going on. I'm not going to sit and judge people, but my point is that we can't be looking at those things, people leaving early, people not singing, people taking too long to come back out for the second half. We can't be looking at those things and just going, it's the tourist fans. Because I promise you, if those people that you're talking about, the tourist fans, have come from the other side of the world, they're not going to leave 5 minutes early because they want to get a train out of Paddington. That ain't going to be the case. So this finger pointing thing is completely unhelpful because actually it fails to actually A, solve anything, but B, get to the crux of the problem. The problem is that there's a lot of people that take going to Arsenal for granted. There is a lot of people that, have done it so much and have done it so often that for them it's no longer this special and magical experience. And that happens to everyone, right? Like, I'm not knocking it. Again, if that's you, that's fine. I'm someone who has been going to Arsenal for a long, long time now. And when I go to a game, I, pinch myself and I'm glad I'm there and I'm thankful and I'm grateful. But to a degree and to a point, I do take it for granted because I've been doing it for so many years. That is natural. That will happen. But then if you're going to point the finger at other people and say it's because of you that the atmosphere is not as good, actually stop, pause, take stock of who it is that's actually leaving early, who it is that's actually spending half the afternoon or the evening in the concourse. Think about that. Because I'm sure if you sort of look into that, you'll find that the vast majority of people that do the vast majority of those things are season ticket holders and not the tourist fan who's busted a gut to come from the other side of the world to watch it. They're going to lap up every single moment of it and they're going to take it all in. So again, finger pointing, it's not helpful. The atmosphere needs to improve. I agree. I think naturally when there is expectation, you don't get that same level of support. And that's not a good thing. And it's something that we've got to battle and fight against, I think, as a fan base. But, when there's great expectation, that can create a nervousness when things aren't necessarily going your way. And that nervousness, because of how desperate you are to get over the line, can translate into an anxiety that then comes across onto the pitch, rather than it being about us looking at our team struggling and going, no, you know what? We're doing better than we should be. Let's get behind them. Come on, let's support them. That's what they need. So I think the better we've got, the more reliable we've got in terms of home form and all the rest of it and stuff, we've just become a little bit complacent as supporters inside the stadium. And I know that people will say, oh, but Mikel's football's boring and it doesn't inspire and all the rest of it. Nonsense. Get behind your team, man. Get behind your team, for God's sake. But anyway, I've had a bit of a ramble and a rant on the whole tourist fan point, because I hate the term tourist fan. You're a fan or you're not. You're a supporter or you're not. Where you come from and where you live doesn't make you a tourist. When the people talk about tourists at football games, they're talking about those people that rock into town, that don't care about football, that don't care about Arsenal, and just want to go back to wherever they came from and say, I went to a Premier League game. That's a tourist. And there are a lot of those at Premier League grounds, and there are a lot of companies that work to provide tickets for these people and to source and sell tickets to these people. We know that. But don't put Arsenal fans, just because they're based somewhere else, into that category, because that's not right, in my opinion. Anyway, don't forget to leave a like on the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Really, really appreciate all the love and support. I've had an update from Virgin Media which says that the problem in the road should be rectified by 6 p.m. today. If that is true, and if that is right, we'll be back live on Tuesday for Tuesday's episode. And there's a Patreon piece coming your way as well, so keep your eyes peeled for it. I'll see you all on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful day. Up the Arsenal. Goodbye.